So I'm just going to introduce myself quickly. My name is Carrie Hessler-Radlett. I am President and CEO of PCI, a Global Communities Partner, and also President of Global Communities. We have recently merged, and that is why we are both together, why I'm the president of both organizations. We are an INGO, but we do have two social enterprises. One is called AfriScout, and Chris Besnecker is here, who is really the developer of that. So Chris, I'm going to just give you 20 seconds to describe AfriScout. Just because you're the one who did it, you should just describe it.
Sure. So we discovered a bit ago that pastoralists in Africa use traditional methods for finding pasture, which have been sort of stressed by climate change. And so we developed an application for them to get a bird's eye view of their pastures and the vegetation growth that's updated every 10 days, as well as a platform for them to exchange information, which they do traditionally. So we've created a social enterprise based on this platform.
Thank you so much. Think of it as MapQuest for pastoralist farmers. And then we also have Dignaloo, which is a low-cost, pro-pore sanitation solution. It's molded plastic. The idea was developed and it was manufactured in Ghana, and it is currently being expanded in other countries. So those are two social enterprises that emerged from our programmatic work. I suspect that other INGOs that have social enterprises may have followed a similar path, but we will learn about that today. Over to you, Jonathan.
Great, well, thank you. And thank you again to Carrie and Devin for inviting me to participate in this panel. I'm Jonathan Ung. I'm an attorney advisor at the U.S. Agency for International Development, where I cover the private sector engagement initiatives. Prior to USAID, I was the first global legal director at Ashoka, which I assume some of you may have heard about. And that's how I kind of got more directly involved with social entrepreneurship. And then I also teach as an adjunct at Georgetown Law, a class on social enterprise, impact investing, and the law. So it's great to be with you all today.
Thanks, Jonathan. Devin?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm Devin Hibbard. I'm the CEO and founder of Street Business School. We are an NGO social enterprise that does poverty eradication, entrepreneurial training for women living in poverty. And we are scaling by training other organizations, other NGOs, how to use our curriculum, customize it to the local communities that they're serving, and expand. And in that way, we are now active in 22 countries with over 100 partner organizations. And we think of ourselves as a social enterprise. And so I'm really excited to convene this group with Carrie and Jonathan. Just a little context. I'm going to share my screen here. Just a little context on the roots of this conversation. We came to be interested in this conversation from a couple different directions. This is an area that Interaction has identified as a core learning area in the last couple years. What is happening in the social enterprise sector that Interaction can understand more? And so I joined the board of Interaction almost a year ago now, and because I wear more of the sort of social enterprise space hat, I have been digging into this question a little bit. And last fall, some of you on this call joined a conversation that we convened around the challenges of working together, of building collaboration between social enterprises, social entrepreneurs, and the international NGO sector. And so really this is in some ways a continuation of that dialogue. Of course, 2020 has also seen dramatic shifts in our sector. We've been talking about it for the last 2 days: localization, racial justice. And so we really wanted to come together to talk about not only what are the challenges, but really try and, in an interactive way, start to think about how do we overcome some of those common challenges that have been identified to accelerate this opportunity for collaboration between INGOs and social enterprises. So we are starting to think about putting together sort of a think tank group, a working group that can, continue to meet and brainstorm ideas in this area. And if you're interested in that, we'd love to stay in touch with you, and we'll let you know how to do that at the end of this session. But our goal really is not to be talking the whole time at you, it's to be talking together and to harvest the incredible thoughtfulness and background that all of you bring to this conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, who has such an interesting position, having worked with both Ashoka and USAID. He sort of has a foot in both camps to help us really understand how are we defining social enterprise.
Great. So on the theme of trying to make it as interactive as possible, I think first we have to start out foundationally to say, what do we mean by social entrepreneurship and social enterprise? So let me open it up to the group, and please chat as you are able what your definition might be for first social enterprise. Feel free just to chat in what comes to your mind. Don't worry about having it be the perfect kind of academic definition. Just what are your thoughts when you think social enterprise? How do you identify with that term? What are some of the traits or characteristics, or even a full-on definition that you might propose here? So Carrie's first up, thank you. Social enterprise is an organization that uses private sector, meaning business methods to achieve social good. Spot on, nice. Triple bottom line, so profit and purpose, where purpose can be social and environmental. Very good. A fee, so Kristen here says a fee for service business that has social impact as a priority along with profit and business objectives. And then Kristen says impact plus financially self-sustaining. Good stuff. Of course, I think I'm speaking to the choir here if you all are self-identified social entrepreneurs. Any other thoughts? Thinking outside the box, of course, definitely. And also, what about the difference between social enterprise and social entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurs? Are those synonymous, or is there a distinction? Maybe also address that in some of the comments too. Danella says, directed at a problem of poverty, but designed to make a profit. And then Lori says, I recently looked up definition of entrepreneur, which according to Oxford Dictionary is a business person who takes on extra financial risk. So I gave a speech that when there's any woman business person, since we get 5% of credit, 1% of vendor contracts from big businesses. Okay, and then there's a question mark in there, maybe to kind of highlight, I don't know, Tosca, if you want to elaborate, or maybe you're just reemphasizing, what could be the differences between there.
No, that was actually a mistake on my end, sorry.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Good deal. A lot of great responses, just really, really on point here. So let me kind of dive in and present to you kind of my framing of this topic, at least as I try to approach it with students, or just any context, frankly. When we talk about social enterprise, I think there are three components, and then I'll offer up a working definition for at least the purposes of our conversation this afternoon. We can parse out the nuances in a different time, but at least to make sure we're all at least speaking the same language for the next half hour, 40 minutes. Three components. First is, whether or not it's an entity or an organization versus the individual. So kind of thinking through that. The second is kind of the approach for pursuing its purposes. And then the third component is, what is the purpose? Someone mentioned triple bottom line. Is it profit? Is it social? Is it environmental? Is it a combination of all three? And then what about priority of those purposes? So that's something to kind of keep in mind in terms of the three components. And so with that, my definition for social enterprise, which is adapted from various definitions out there, including from the Social Enterprise Alliance, is essentially a social enterprise is an entity that can be nonprofit or for-profit. So again, it's an entity, not an individual. And it doesn't matter that it's for-profit or nonprofit, that pursues a primary social mission. So here's where we're talking about the actual purpose is primarily social. So that could also be environmental too, by the way. But the primariness of the social or environmental mission is above the profit motive. And then lastly, using commercial means to achieve those purposes. So a lot of kind of what people have already talked about. And by commercial means, let me unpack that real quickly, because that can be a little bit fuzzy. And I think Carrie mentioned at the outset, business approaches. To me, if we were to further define what a commercial or business approach means to pursuing a social mission, I think there's at least three components. The first is pursuing some kind of market-based revenue stream. So not just relying solely on grants and donations, but using the market forces to create a sustainable source of revenue. And then you have the second component of commerciality in some regards. And that's more of a focus on using data and evidence as opposed to just anecdotes alone to guide your decisions. And then lastly, the idea of scale. And so this is where there's a little bit of divergence. Scale, not just in terms of the organization or the revenue streams or the size of one's organization, but scaling of the idea. And so I think all of that combined, again, an entity that could be nonprofit or for-profit using primarily, pursuing primarily a social purpose through commercial means. So with that, let me turn it back over to Devin.
Actually, I think we're going to Carrie.
Oh, Carrie, sorry.
Carrie, you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you so much. Naturally, this is a moment when my Zoom is choosing to install. So I really love the conversation, especially I love the comments in the chat box. And, you know, as I've been reflecting on this topic, I've been thinking about what differentiates INGOs and social enterprises and how can we come together a little more effectively? How can we collaborate? But in order to collaborate, you need to know what the difference is and what each might bring to the table. So here are a couple things that have come to my mind. INGOs build projects based on longstanding best practices, and social entrepreneurs try things that often have never been done before. INGOs spend the first 6 months in project planning and startup, whereas social entrepreneurs operate in the market often have to demonstrate customer value within the first 6 months. INGOs are tied to an agreed set of objectives, unchanged throughout the project, and are linked to funding obligations, whereas social entrepreneurs can pivot on a dime to adapt to customer feedback and needs. INGOs typically contemplate a 2 to 3 year time horizon in our outcomes planning cycle, whereas social entrepreneurs look for outcomes in 2 to 3 weeks. INGOs put forward and test specific theories of change, faithfully executed over multiple years using scientifically rigorous evaluation methods, where social entrepreneurs concern themselves with viability, assessed through regular customer feedback, growth, and revenue data. INGOs are driven by scale and impact among the most vulnerable populations. Social entrepreneurs may also be focused on vulnerable populations, but they're also focused on demonstrating product viability, return on investment within a given market segment first, to lure on investment needed for scale later in order to deliver on a social good. And if they can't succeed, they move on. So there are many differences, and none of these are better or worse. They're just different and they meet different needs. And you know, with so many differentiators, you'd think that together we'd be stronger, and we'd find ways to collaborate, and yet it really hasn't happened all that often. We have social enterprises that have been grown up independently, usually by individuals, sometimes from within large organizations. And then we have the international NGOs that really are attracted to the speed, agility, and ownership of the social enterprise model, but haven't quite known how to tap into it. So how can we find ways to work together as partners to leverage the qualities of the other for the benefits of the community we serve? So in order to do that, we're gonna do a little bit of a word cloud. I think Bettina is going to, we're gonna do it on Mentimeter, which I hope you're familiar with. We're gonna we're going to ask you to take out your phone, and Bettina in the chat box is going to drop the link. Oops, we're all going to go into the link, and we'll have a word cloud. So can we do that? Here it is. So we'll see you back in about 3 minutes after we've had a chance to access the survey here.
Sorry, what's the code?
Oh,
It's
I
in
don't
the
use
chat.
the code.
If you look in the chat, there is a link that you can just click on.
It then asks you for a code after you link
You
on
need
it.
a code, always with Menti.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, do we not have a code?
It worked for me. It's that T7MCSDXRP.
Oh, here's a code right here, folks.
No.
Here's a code from Bettina. Just copy that and then, yeah.
Yep, there we go.
Thanks, everyone, for your patience.
I think Bettina's going to share her screen as we start to see these words populate.
Some further great comments in the chat box. So good to see all of you, by the way, while we're waiting for the Menti to come up. Here we go. Ah, innovation is the winner, but scale and sustainability right there. IDing market gaps. Ooh, and more things are coming up. Maybe. Empowering scale was another one that seemed like it might come up. Revenue, flexibility and funding, scale, sustainability, huge, adaptability, agility, new ideas, new fields, partnership, new services. That was clever, putting it together as one word. Long impact, scale up, expand biz model. There's more creativity there. Human-centered
It
design.
told us it was going to take the spaces out. It did not tell the truth.
It did not tell the truth. ROI-SROI, excellent. We have some great words here, which, by the way, we're going to share everything that comes out of this with all of you. We've, I think, got your email addresses, so just be aware of that. So none of this is going to be lost to us. All right. So Devin, now we're back to you.
Great. So we are seeing that there are clear benefits to collaboration between social enterprises and international NGOs. And yet we see, as Carrie mentioned, that it doesn't happen as often as we like. So what we'd like to do is spend the rest of our time with this group really understanding what we can do about some of the key challenges that have emerged from the conversation and some research that's been done on this. And we want to focus on three key areas that have been identified through some of these processes. The first, and I would say one that comes up most frequently, is that funding is a barrier to collaboration. Project-based funding with short timeframes, with very specific deliverables, does not allow international NGOs to experiment, to try something, to scale something. So that's been identified by some of you actually as a key barrier. that it's hard without some initial seed money to do some of these things, and finding that seed money is hard. That there are different funders. There's sort of institutional funders like USAID and other bilaterals, and then there's all these impact investors and foundations who are looking for maybe return on investment at some level. So there's these different categories of funders, and trying to understand how do we work with different funders for different kinds of projects and scaling. And there's some people who are really looking for funding hero, the heropreneur in social enterprise, that there's one charismatic person, and that, although INGOs have proven results, that some of these funders don't want to talk to the INGOs. They want to fund the one person out there creating innovation, disruptive innovation. So we're going to have one group that dives into that. A second identified barrier is that sometimes there's a cultural mismatch. Trying to scale an entrepreneurial venture within an existing INGO, sometimes there's staff from a cultural standpoint, cultural mismatch for staff. This entrepreneurial attitude, Carrie talked about scaling innovation and customer feedback. Sometimes just embedding that within an INGO doesn't fit, or there's friction. Or for a social entrepreneur, going into the structures and multiple procedures and layers of decision making in an INGO can be, constraining, can feel constraining. So cultural fit is the second one. And third is that these sectors in some ways exist in parallel universes, right? We have interaction. This is mostly international NGOs. Then there's the Skull World Forum that's all social entrepreneurs. There's impact investors, and there's USAID. And it's not very often that these people are hanging out at the same bars after conferences or conferencing together. One person told me that they went to the Skull World Forum and they were treated as if they were a dinosaur because they were an international NGO, like so outdated and last year, and just that feeling of like, wow, I really don't belong here. And, social entrepreneurs might feel that in other spaces. So this idea that we don't talk to each other, we don't have these conversations around where are the opportunities for collaboration? So 3 areas of challenge. Our goal in the next 10 minutes, we're going to break into small groups, 8 minutes. We are going to try and brainstorm solutions. So we are going to come up with concrete ideas in each of these categories, whichever group you're in. How could we bridge these challenges to try to create more collaboration? We're asking each group to assign a note taker. And when we come back, we're going to ask each group to report on just one of your ideas. Hopefully you'll have 10 or 15 that will help us bridge, but we're going to ask you to take 1 minute to report on one idea. Okay, here's an example. The funding group might say, we're going to convene a collaboration think tank. We're going to bring together NGOs, USAID, the Gates Foundation, and a handful of social entrepreneurs to really try and do a sprint to understand how we can build more collaboration. So that's the kind of concrete idea that we're looking for. Any questions before Bettina breaks us out into small groups? All right, Bettina, take us away. You have 8 minutes. We'll meet you back here in a couple.
All groups. I'm opening. Please choose the option to join a new screen that should pop up. Christina, Katie, and Torkin, have you not gotten the pop-up to tell you to join the breakout rooms, or do you prefer not to join? Thank you. Katie and Christina, did you see it on your screen to join? Christina, will you join the breakout room 1? Hi, Christina, I just assigned you to breakout room 2. Hi, Leonore. Can I assign you to one of the breakout rooms?
Hi, thank you. Sorry for my delay.
No worries. I will assign you to breakout room 2 where Carrie is facilitating. Is that all right with you?
Host has opened it.
You will see
No,
it pop up. Just say join. I hope
Okay,
you saw
thank
it
you.
pop up.
I
Sure.
see now. Okay.
Okay, great. Yes, please join. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
Nikki, can I assign you to breakout room 2 with Carrie?
Sure, please.
Excellent. Moving you there now. Did you see it pop up to join? Excellent. Hi, Charlene, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Charlene, we're in a breakout room. May I put you in one with Carrie?
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I in the wrong meeting?
No, no, you're good. We're just in a breakout room. You will see it popped up to join one. Would you join Carrie's group?
No, I'm trying to join another. I apologize. I'm
Oh,
trying
okay, no worries.
I'm trying to join the transparency, accountability, and communications one.
Oh yeah, no, that's not the one.
All right, thank you.
Sure, sorry about the confusion.
We had 45 seconds left, so.
Oh, so we'll have other people trickling in.
Nine seconds, 8, 7, 6.
Welcome back, everyone. So happy to have you here. We have just a few more minutes left, so I just wanted to offer an opportunity for each group to give a really quick report out, 1 minute for each group. So can I just go to the funding group first?
Chris, would you mind? I think, I've already spoken. Chris, would you mind giving a quick recap?
Sure. There were a couple, I think, key issues discussed related to funding. One is that a greater appreciation on the INGO side and our traditional funders or donors is that the reality with social enterprises is that it's often blended funding. There's no sort of, there's few where you see sort of where it's purely 100% funded by through the profits generated. So that's an important to know. And then and the time horizon as well, that to reach break even in a private venture doesn't happen overnight. It's a longer time horizon. So we have to, from the funder and from the NGO perspective, I think we have to understand that. Another concept was brought up is this issue of scale, and it's either 1 million people impacted or it's not worth it. And is there something that's sort of in the middle that is worthy of investment, and can it be maybe incremental and stepwise? So those were some of the concepts that I think we've discussed. And if I missed anything, John, please add.
No, that was great summary. Thank you.
Excellent. The culture group, number 2, we didn't appoint a reporter outer, but I'm just thinking either Nikki or Torkin, you were taking some notes. Either of you want to report out?
Well, I'll just say, we looked at the fairly vast differences on the personal level and organizational levels between the two groups, and how to break down these cultural barriers. So we were really looking for what are the opportunities. And so we started with the obvious, that getting together, working on projects together, finding those points that might bring us together. And we talked about the USAID, the Office of Small Business Development might be an obvious group to bring us together. We talked about how funders might be the group that we could rely on to try and bring these two different groups together. We talked about how many people in the international NGOs really have to sign off on decisions and program and progress development, how the timing and hierarchy is so different than in the social entrepreneurial world. And, clearly it has to do with us starting to work together and finding it satisfying, and looking at the things which frustrate and annoy us about one another, so that we can find a cultural way to hold hands. Nikki, do you have anything, or Carrie, you want to add?
No,
sure, I'll add just one thing. This idea about risk, right? When you're working with any entrepreneur, particularly social entrepreneurs and small businesses in general, looking at risk and being able, as larger organizations, for us to think about how we use our resources to buy down some of the risks that social entrepreneurs need to take, and taking a more facilitation approach might be the way to go instead of looking at solving, using our resources to solve a problem, being more open to actively looking to use our resources to buy down some of the risks that are inherent in social entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Excellent. It was a great conversation. And now to the Parallel Universes group.
Yeah, that was us, right? Okay, so we had about 8 or 9, 10 good ideas, but I'm going to smush them together into 3 main points. One is the need to develop more joint language, shared language, through translation guides, etc. The need for matchmakers between INGOs and social enterprises, and maybe related to that, and this was already said by a few other groups, that we need to have more joint events. So one idea came up is that the large sector or theme level conferences should, on a regular basis, have all parties come together so that there's more of that organic interaction and learning from each other.
Excellent. Any other takers on the Parallel Universes group? All right, we are sadly out of time. This session just flew by, but I'm really grateful to all of you for being here today. We're going to share the results of our conversations, all these great ideas that have come out with you via email. If you haven't put your email in the chat, please do so. This issue is important to the interaction community. We have a working group dedicated to discussion and action related to better collaboration and learning between social enterprises and INGOs. And we'd love to have you join us for further conversation and action. So on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Jonathan and Devin for being such great co-hosts, and all of you take care, be safe, go in peace. Appreciate you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for pulling this together. I know it's a lot of work, all voluntary. Thank you.
Take care, you guys. Thank